Hello, MCU fans. Today is going to be my breakdown and review of X-Men 97, Episode 3. Another fantastic episode. I am absolutely loving this series. Now, there will clearly be spoilers, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a March contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You might win a book or a steel book. Best of luck. And of course, we have the membership option if you want to help me with my goal of doing this full-time one day. You get cool perks like custom emojis and behind-the-scenes videos, but honestly, no matter how you support the channel, it's all greatly appreciated. Leaving comments, liking videos, subscribing, those all go a long way. So thank you so much. Okay, so this episode, similar to the previous two, starts with new opening scenes. They change each episode, and I think they are hints as to things that we're going to see in the episode itself. So I'm always interested to look at them really closely and see how they tie in with the episode. This one was a little harder, although I do think I know why they showed this, and I'll discuss it a little later, but it's Magneto actually attacking the X-Men. And this is a scene from the first series, one of the early episodes. Then I love this. This is a little homage to Jubilee running against the fence, which we would always see in the original series opening credits. Now it's Sunspot doing that, and I believe this is because we will see Sunspot, again, tortured by his mother, or the spirit of his mother, who does not accept him as a mutant. There's lots of references to the Phoenix Saga. I will go into that more at the end of the episode, but I think these are very, very important scenes they're showing us. There's Lilandra and Professor X. Of course, Professor X ultimately went off with her at the end of the last series, original series. But in this case, this is during the Phoenix Saga. And of course, here's where Phoenix takes her own life, kills herself, and poor Scott has to look on in dismay and sorrow. And of course, this is the end of the Dark Phoenix Saga. So again, this is a very, very important scene. I will come back to discussing later why they're showing us this. And then here is good old Bishop, man, the time traveler. Notice he's got his wrist item on there, and clearly there's some time travel that come up in this episode. So we'll discuss that more later. Of course, Rogue kissing her hand because she can't kiss Gambit. And this is being shown, I believe, because Magneto and Rogue relationship really gets some attention in this episode. And, of course, poor Morph being terrorized by Mr. Sinister, and that, of course, comes up in this episode as well. So I love this idea that they do each time, and it's just kind of fun. All right, so then we move to the episode itself, and it starts with, and I'm going to refer to her as Madelyn because it's just simpler for this video to give her a different name than Jean or Jean Clone. So Madelyn is scanning Jean's memories. And what Madelyn discovers is that Jean's memories are very fragmented. There's no faces to them. They're just soulless, basically. I think this is because Jean is just waking up. She's trying to pull all her memories together. But I also think it's a very clever homage to the comics when Madelyn Pryor was basically built and constructed out of Jean's memories. So very cool. Then this memory is so stinking important. I will definitely touch on this later, but don't forget this. This is Jean's memory of the Phoenix Saga, the very end in particularly of the Phoenix Saga where she gave up her own life on the moon. So yeah, very important memory. And again, this is from the Dark Phoenix Saga, the 4th episode. All right, so then Madelyn is saying her mind, well, notice they even say Jean. They really mess with us with the closed captioning. This is not Jean. This is Madelyn. But anyway, her mind is dense, vague, and uncertain memories. So now we're seeing some memories from the original series, the first couple episodes. Here's another one of them kissing and Wolverine not being real happy about it. Madelyn says it's as if her awareness was born only yesterday, because it was. We're going to see that literally Jean has woke up from being cloned just yesterday. So again, here's the Phoenix Saga, and then the aftermath of the Phoenix Saga. Actually, there's multiple times this particular scene showed up in the original series. Then this is their first marriage. So I love that Madelyn says, I see a den of confusion and pain. Yes, you do, because this was very confusing. This is the first of 2 marriages between Scott and Jean. And in this case, it was a false marriage. Now, here's the image they used, which I love this, how they're doing these little homages to the original series. But the reason this marriage didn't pan out is because it was Morph pretending to be the pastor, and he did it, they did it out of revenge against the X-Men because Mr. Sinister was controlling Morph. So yeah, very, very cool. She gets this memory of their first marriage, and their second marriage will come up. I'll discuss that as well, but this was their first failed marriage. Then Madelyn says, now I see her in some sort of laboratory. And this, of course, is Mr. Sinister's laboratory, where Mr. Sinister did the cloning, and that's Jean just waking up right now. This memory is from later in the episode that Mr. Sinister actually shows Madelyn, but I wanted to include it here to show you that's definitely Jean, therefore, on the left, Madelyn on the right, and this is Mr. Sinister doing the actual cloning. And here we both see them laying on the tables together as he's doing his the cloning experiments. So here's what's kind of cool. I really liked this reveal. I thought it was really well done of Madelyn as the clone and Jean is now awakening. This reveal was much better than this reveal. Sorry, Rhodey. It just didn't work. It just didn't work. Poor Secret Invasion. I actually thought that Secret Invasion started out pretty good, but man, I did not like the final episode. So kudos to X-Men 97 for doing a much better job of revealing who is the real person and who is not. But anyway, so then Madelyn sees Jean escaping and now trying to get home, and there's Crazy Eddie. We've seen Crazy Eddie show up a couple times in the first 2 episodes. She's desperate. She's alone. She has one purpose, so she sees Magneto. Literally, now they're telling us, she just woke up, right? Just woke up yesterday. She has one hope, that is the X-Mansion and the X-Men, who she realizes may be where she has a home. So yeah, this brings us up to speed with Jean, and right to the end of the second episode, right? Where the doorbell rings, and there's Jean at the door, I need the X-Men. There's Scott going, wait, who did I just have this kid with? I'm confused. And there's Madelyn, who now we know is Madelyn, and not very happy about the situation. All right, so after Madelyn finishes scanning Jean's mind, we see something that I'm assuming no one else sees, right? This is kind of a mental thing. But we see the diamond on her forehead, and that, of course, tells us that Mr. Sinister is in control of her. So that's our first hint that he's our villain of this episode, although it was pretty obvious, honestly. You kind of knew the storyline and knew this was coming. But yeah, Mr. Sinister now takes over her mind, or starts to. He doesn't have full control of her yet, we'll see. But he's starting to take over her. Then Beast has a very interesting discovery. He says that Jean Doe, that's really clever, Jean Doe is older, the proper age. So we now know for certain that is Jean, the real Jean, laying in the bed. On the other hand, Madelyn, he says, yours, while identical to hers, the DNA, it's not the right age. Now, I really wish he had said how old she is, right? Because if he had said, yours says, 3 days, or 3 months, or 3 years, we would have had some indication of specifically when Jean had been cloned, because Madelyn would only be, let's say, 3 years old. Nope, they don't tell us, and unfortunately, Madelyn destroys that vial, or that Petri dish. So, the mystery continues on, but I do think, hang in there, I do think we know specifically when Jean was cloned. But anyway, the interesting line from Madelyn where she says, Storm would have believed me. I'm kind of curious if Storm would have. I mean, given the fact that Beast discovered what he did and that there's 2 of them and all that, maybe even Storm wouldn't have believed her at this point. But the tears in her eyes shows that her memories really are real. She thinks she is Jean. Very, very fascinating. This will be touched on more later in the episode. All right, so she goes off to then go be with Nathan for a little bit, while they're working on Bishop's time device. So here's the time travel reference that we saw in the opening credits. He says, the time band's looking slick, Beast. The future's calling me. So I'm still trying to figure out why Bishop is in the present, right? Because the last time he appeared was in the original series in the Beyond Good and Evil 4-parter. And presumably, he left to the future after this. And I think there's even a hint we're going to get to later that tells us he did leave. So then for some reason he must have come back. I hope they tell us why. But, oh man, can't believe I said this. But in the last breakdown, I said that was Dazzler. It's not Dazzler, it's Shard. Shard is his sister from the future. And actually, she's the big clue that they both left to the future after this episode. But here's the good thing. I screwed up and I said it was Dazzler, but I am glad nobody noticed it. I mean, like absolutely nobody well, okay, a lot of people noticed it. Oh man, what a brain fart. I can't believe I said that. Anyway, it's not Dazzler. I'm so sorry. It is Shard, his sister, and thank you to everybody. There's probably even more of you, but thank you to everybody who made sure to point out my error. You guys were so nice about it, though. You were so nice. Anyway, so Bishop then talks a little bit about how time travel works in the X-Men universe. He says, time isn't some history book. It's always writing, flipping back a few pages, rewriting things, skipping forward, headed in, and he doesn't get to finish. But I got to point out, this is why at times, I mean, I love the X-Men comics. Spider-Man was my favorite. X-Men was my second favorite. But sometimes these time travel stories drove me crazy because, to Bishop's point, you never know what the actual history is because they rewrite it so many times. Oh, well. Be interesting to see what they do in the MCU when the X-Men get fully introduced. Because obviously, in the X-Men timeline, it's all over the place with time travel. But anyway, so Bishop is basically reminding us of that. But Beast breaks in with his awesome phrase that he always uses, "Oh, my stars and garters," and he says, "I know who cloned Jean, and he can be described as nothing other than Sinister." So if we didn't already know it was Mr. Sinister, this was our big clue. So then, meanwhile, Madelyn, who's been off with Nathan, hears something over the baby monitor. They say, "Man on radio." It's like, oh no, it ain't a radio. That's a baby monitor. And as a father who had a young baby, I can tell you nothing would creep me out more than hearing a voice coming over the baby monitor. But anyway, Mr. Sinister says, Jean Grey. And he asked, "Who are you?" Or she asked, "Who are you?" And he says, "Most refer to me as Mr. Sinister." So yeah, now we know he is definitely the villain of this series of X-Men 97, but I think he's also going to be one of the main villains when the X-Men are fully in the MCU. And he says, "But you can call me Father." He is so creepy, so creepy. And then that's when Madelyn realizes, you want our son. Or maybe I shouldn't even say realizes, she probably remembers, because she's got the same memories as Jean, and I'm presuming this actually is Jean in this scene from the original series, and we will talk, again, about when I think Jean was cloned. But she has the memory of Season 2, Episode 2 from the original series, where Mr. Sinister explained how much he is obsessed with Scott and Jean. Your whole lives, I've watched you, tracked you, studied you. You are the prototypes, the chosen ones. And from your offspring, I will control the future of all human creatures on Earth. Wow. Your genetic material will be the foundation, the master bloodline for an unbeatable race of mutants. So yeah, he has been hot after Jean and Scott's child for quite some time. And he finally realized the only way he was going to get that child was to create a clone of Jean, Madelyn, and have her go off and, conceive the child with Scott, and then he would activate her and bring the child to him. So clever plan. I like the fact they finally paid off basically all of Mr. Sinister's appearances from the original series. Very cool. So then he says, "Yep, time to wake up my queen, because I want that child. My influence over your mind is flawless." So yeah, she is now fully activated. And one of the first things she does, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, is she destroys this photo of Jean and Scott getting married, which leads to the question of, was that Jean or was that Madelyn, right? We don't know at this point, but I do think we have conclusive evidence one way or another. But I also love the fact that they keep doing these homages to the comics. Look at that, just picture perfect representation from the comics of their marriage. Just so cool. I mean, the storylines in the X-Men animated series go off in their own direction, but they have such great respect for the source material, and that is so cool. So then we see Madelyn swirling around and saying, "Now they will know my Inferno." And notice her pose looks exactly like her pose from the Inferno comic line. Great storyline. And obviously she's wearing a little bit more clothes than she was in the comics, but otherwise just a picture-perfect representation of the Goblin Queen, Madelyn Pryor from the comics. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so now she's going to start messing with all the X-Men one at a time. But first, we need one little setup to remind us that Rogue and Magneto are spending a lot of time together, and people are noticing. Morph is giving Gambit grief, basically saying, hey, looks like Magneto and Rogue have the Danger Room next, and Rogue's really training her stamina with her new boss. Yikes. So Gambit's not happy about that. He takes off to go find them. And basically, Wolverine has one of his classic lines. Think you just sent his hush puppies up into his stomach. Love the humor. Love the humor in this series. Love Wolverine in particular with his one-liners. So he basically says, hey, I'm going to go check on Jean. You can shower, Morph. So Morph heads into the shower, and that is when Madelyn begins messing first with Morph. And Morph believes that's Logan in the shower, because Logan said he was leaving, but now suddenly Logan's taking a shower. And so Morph says, well, you need some help with those hard-to-reach spaces, and creates his own set of claws. So making it really, really clear what we had kind of probably guessed from the first couple episodes, and even really guessed from the original series, is that Morph might have more of an attraction to Wolverine than Wolverine has for Morph. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, clearly, Wolverine is obsessed with Jean. So, what does that mean? What does that mean for their relationship? My guess is he's going to stay buddies with Morph, and Morph is going to eventually, express his feelings. But we'll have to see. But so, Logan, in a distorted voice, which is really Madelyn in Morph's mind, says, always with the jokes, Morph? As if I don't know. As if we all don't know. So really, this is Morph's fear being realized. What if Wolverine knows I'm not kidding? I really am interested in him romantically. What if everybody knew? So you do wonder, does Wolverine know? I'm guessing, no, he does not. And it'll be interesting to see if Morph, eventually expresses his feelings for Wolverine. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I mean, certainly this has the potential to be a controversial storyline, but I find it interesting. I find it interesting to see them extending this idea. So, yeah, I'm real curious to see where it goes from here. But my guess, for the record, I'll go on the record and say I don't think that Wolverine's going to return romantic feelings towards Morph. That's just my guess. We'll see. All right, so then Madelyn messes with Gambit, because remember, Gambit has been very afraid that Rogue and Magneto are together, and sure enough, he sees them together. Notice all the vines around them. This is another nice homage to when Rogue and Magneto were an item in the comics, and they were in the Savage Land at the time. You can see Kazar there. So yeah, makes sense that we see the vines, and then we get this nasty-looking body horror where they're just morphing into one person. Ugh. As Rogue says, I found myself a real man. Honestly, I have not seen anything this gross, this body horror-like, since this. Oh, Loki, stop. No, you just can't unsee that. So what do you think? Which one's grosser? I'm going to go with Loki. I'm still going to go with Loki. That is about the nastiest thing I've ever seen. His nose, his mouth, oh. But anyway, I will give them credit for doing some pretty good body horror between Rogue and Magneto. So let me know your vote. Which one freaks you out the most? And then Gambit says Gambit can never unsee that. Yeah, I love how he refers to himself in third person, and this was perfect this time around. All right, so then this is insane. So Madelyn now messes with Jubilee and Sunspot, who seem to be on a date together. She sends something from their movie out to attack them, kind of like in the Ring movie. So Jubilee uses her energy power that shoots her power at this nasty creature. And then notice it starts with just some, little blood coming out the back of the head, a little more blood coming out of the back of the head, and then, oh, are you kidding me? Oh, no. Oh, my goodness gracious. That is really nasty. And that explains then why there's half a head laying on the ground. Oh, my word. Now, granted, that lasts about 0.01 seconds in real time. But, man, that was gnarly. Makes me wonder just how much they're going to push Marvel Zombies to the R rating. Supposedly that's going to be TVMA. So, wow. Very impressive. All right, so then this nasty thing starts out as his mom and then seems to be one of maybe his friends, quote-unquote friends, who are basically saying, don't look, that is not my son. So basically, his mom and his friend are basically saying your mom has rejected you. She does not care that she does not want you to be a mutant. You are not her son any longer. So I think we're really going to see this tension building with Sunspot, who, notice he doesn't even use his powers. He continues to not use them because I think he's so rejecting them. So fascinating. Very fascinating. All right, so then Madelyn messes with Beast, although Beast gets off pretty easy. I mean, that thing is gross, yes, but hey, if that's the worst thing that happens to Beast, he's going to be fine. On the other hand, Cyclops gets it pretty bad, as does Bishop. So here's nasty-looking Professor X, who says, demerits, my boy. And then what does he get demerits for? Well, failing to lead the team, and failing to sire a child with the proper wife. Just says it so casually. Dude, you slept with the wrong woman. So yeah, that's a demerit. And I agree. You should get a demerit for sleeping with the wrong wife. Too funny. And then Bishop sees Shard, not Dazzler, Shard. Anyway, she says, "You abandoned me, Bishop. Where's your home? When is your time? And where do you belong, brother?" So again, they're brother and sister. And this is why I do think they're confirming Bishop did leave with Shard there in the original series, that in the 4th season. And then Bishop must have just returned on his own, leaving Shard really upset that he's gone. And he's feeling guilty about it. So very interesting. I hope they tell us more, but I do think this answered at least some of our questions. And then Madelyn messes with everybody, basically turns the whole place into Dante's Inferno, another reference to the Inferno comics. Beast is saying, "While I share the apparent affection for Dante's Inferno, I must ask how he's exerting this much power, because Beast thinks it is Mr. Sinister. Of course, it turns out it's actually Madelyn." Then this is really cool. We get some nice teamwork for a power-up. I love how they combine powers. Bishop says, "Cyclops hit me." Cyclops does indeed hit him quite hard, and Bishop absorbs it all and then says, "Time for an exorcism, punks." That's awesome. And boom, blasts everybody. Then we get this gnarly-looking Viking ghost sentinel. I don't know what's going on here, but that's pretty much when Jean decides enough is enough. She wakes up from her sleep, and she decides to stop the madness. So she repels basically the Madelyn psychically, stops all these illusions, if they were even illusions. I'm not sure what they were. I assume they were illusions. But anyway, stops everything and lands, and then faints, of course, because she always faints, poor Jean. But then Madelyn reveals her new name. "Who am I?" she says. And by the way, notice the baby in the little circle. That's so cute. Little Nathan, just chilling, sleeping the whole time. "Who am I?" she says. "I am the Goblin Queen." And she looks amazing. Love it, love it, love it. So she was so well done in this episode. It's a shame this is the only time we're probably going to end up seeing the Goblin Queen, but man, she was just delicious. So amazing. All right, so I love this. You got to have the closed caption on to be able to see this little line here from Roberto. But he says, "I guess we don't get to finish the movie?" That's funny. I mean, they were on a date. He and Jubilee were on a date. So, yeah, he wishes he could see the rest of the movie. Then finally, in saunters in Magneto and Rogue. And Rogue says, "Now who went and hired a stampede of buffalo to do a home makeover?" But what everybody else is wondering is, where have you been? What? So you didn't get any nasty, crazy mind messing from Madelyn because you were doing what? Anyway, we'll find out eventually. I'm wondering if they're really an item or not. We'll have to see. I'm kind of hoping not. I'm kind of hoping Magneto is helping Rogue maybe learn how to control her powers, because they were able to touch each other. So maybe Magneto can figure out how to help Rogue actually touch Gambit. That'd be cool. Or maybe they're hot and heavy. Let me know your thoughts. But anyway, so Scott says, "Sinister created the clone. He made her so he could get his hands on our son." So he's realizing the same thing that Madelyn did. And then Morph tells the sad story of Mr. Sinister. So Sinister is one of the most evil men, actually the most evil man who ever existed. He was a scientist in the 1800s. And then he started cutting up mutants, stealing our DNA to enhance himself and prolong his life. And of course, what he's doing is summarizing this episode from the original series, the final season, episode 9. And so you can watch it if you want more of the origin of Mr. Sinister. But I really do like how this series is telling you enough so that you don't need to have watched the original series. Would you get more out of X-Men 97 if you watched the original series? Yeah, you would. And that's why I'm highlighting these episodes to say, hey, if you want to know more, go back and check this episode out. Obviously, it'd be better just to watch everything, probably, but you don't have to because they're doing such a good job of bringing us up to speed. Also, Morph then changes to the really sad-looking when he was being hypnotized and brainwashed by Mr. Sinister, and of course that's a reference to when he was or when they were going nuts in the original series, which we can see here. Thank goodness Morph broke out of that, but Morph is probably always going to feel that Mr. Sinister is hiding in their mind and always lurking, right? Because Morph says he can take away their will. I should know. So yeah. Craziness. All right, so I love this. Magneto's basically like, hey, Sinister has plagued us for far too long. Let's take this dude out. That's nice. I mean, Magneto has been very, very, let's solve problems that the X-Men have never solved. You know, let's get the Morlocks into Genosha, right? Let's solve that problem. And let's go kick Sinister's butt. So he sends a team in, but of course, it's not Sinister that shows up first. It's the Goblin Queen. I love the colors. They're so beautiful. The stained glass windows, the greens, her powers, how cool they look. Oh, my goodness. Again, she is just amazing. Just amazing. All right, so Morph then provides more of his cameos. So I didn't mention this one earlier, but he does show us Spiral, and Spiral is from the episode in the original series Mojo Vision, and also I think they're doing this to say, hey, this is a character you might want to go check out because Spiral will be appearing probably in the next episode, and we'll talk more about that later. But so Morph turns into Spiral earlier, but now in the battle with the Goblin Queen, he turns into Ileana Rasputin, who is very, very cool. Kicks some major butt. And then when her mind, well, that's really tricky because Morph is being Ileana, but we still can't say her. When their mind is taken over by the Goblin Queen, Morph then turns into Darkchild, which is the more evil version of Ileana Rasputin from the comics. So I love it. We're getting some really, really cool cameos. Keep this up, Marvel. Every episode, I would love a couple different cameos from Morph. So very cool. All right. Then the Goblin Queen attacks Magneto. And I'm wondering if maybe this line from the Goblin Queen, where Madelyn says, look at you, a villain playing dress up as a hero. Is that perhaps why they showed that scene in the opening credits where Magneto was attacking the X-Men? Because basically Madelyn is poking at him saying, are you really good? Or are you just pretending? Very interesting. I think that's why they showed that scene. All right, so then I love it. She says, I should have you as a toy, which actually, Madelyn, you can. You can have Magneto as a toy. I must say, those Marvel Legend action figures are pretty darn cool. I may have to get a set of them. But yeah, whether or not this was a little hint at merchandising or not, it's funny either way. Because when these original X-Men animated series came out, they were always marketing to kids. Buy our toys, buy our toys, buy our toys. So pretty funny. Pretty funny. But then she even vanquishes Magneto. That is how powerful. I mean, Magneto is a very, very powerful mutant, but Jean is even more so, slash Madelyn, slash Goblin Queen. And of course, she makes sure to remove half of Magneto's shirt, because that happens to all the X-Men, at least the guys. All right, so then back at the X-Mansion, Jean and Wolverine have a moment, if you will. So Wolverine's trying to help her focus, because she's so messed up with all her memories. He's like, focus on me. Focus on me and just my memories. And that's when Jean realizes, I meant all of that to you. I mean, she's known that Wolverine is in love with her. But, I mean, this isn't just some little mini affection, like a little crush. He's saying, no, even more. You mean that and more. And that's why I think ultimately he's not going to return Morph's affections. Not because, you know, he doesn't like Morph or whatever, isn't attracted to Morph. It's not even going to be about attraction. This is a deep, deep love that he has for Jean that he cannot seem to get past. But you never know. Maybe they'll find a way to go there. So anyway, very interesting. But clearly we see that Jean does not return that level of deep affection because as soon as she realizes and senses Scott's in danger, that's her true love. That is the one she truly loves. So she breaks out of this moment with Wolverine and says, Scott, he's in danger. And now her focus is saving him. So I love this. Beast says, my dear, you're not going anywhere. And she politely says, Beast, please, my body won't be an issue. But all I could do is hear this from Sam Jackson saying at least the first two words, Beast, please. And he probably would not have used beast. He would have used a different five-letter B word. But anyway, too funny. But she's a little more polite. My body won't be an issue because she is going to mentally fight with Madelyn, which we begin to see. We see both Jean and Madelyn attacking each other. You took my face, my husband, my family. I was Phoenix, and that's key. Who was Phoenix, right? We don't know yet at this point, but I was Phoenix, me, power incarnate. And Jean is trying to help Madelyn, saying, power, is that all you can remember? Because, of course, Mr. Sinister has taken over Madelyn's mind, turned Madelyn into the Goblin Queen, and so Jean is trying to break that hold, so trying to bring her back to some early memories. That memory of Professor X first showing up at her doorstep. Is she here? And poor Jean saying, Mom and Dad called you to help fix me. So this is kind of cool because it's an homage to actually X-Men: The Last Stand, the original trilogy, final movie in the original trilogy of the X-Men, but of Professor X first coming to Jean. And that, I think that is helping Madelyn, to go back and remember when you were innocent, remember when you were a little girl. And Jean is saying, please let me help you. But then this is a fascinating discussion where Madelyn's saying, well, can you tell me who I am? Basically, which of these memories are mine and which of them are yours? And I love this one on the far right. What a cool homage to X-Men 136. Once again, they are really, really pulling these images from the comics, these memories we have. So that's very cool. Speaking of memories, right? Then Madelyn says, can you say which of these memories are yours? And basically, which are mine? And once again, this is a cool homage to classic X-Men #1. Notice some of the characters are in the exact same positions, like Storm, for example, and Wolverine. Jean Grey is wearing a different costume, but just a really cool and Cyclops is in the same position, and then some of the other characters are filled in, to replace like Nightcrawler with Jubilee. But very, very cool. Just love this. But here's the real key to Madelyn's point: we are what we remember. And you, Jean, remember nothing. That's a really good point. We really are what we remember. I mean, we're basically bones surrounded by a sack of flesh, right? And our mind. And our mind is everything. Our mind is who we are. It's our soul, if you will, but it's our memories. That is what makes us who we are. So Jean then plays on that and says, okay, then let's look at what I know you find important, and that is Nathan. Nathan is a living reminder of the purest love two people can share, and no one can ever, ever take that away from you. This memory will be yours forever. And that's what finally breaks Madelyn out of the spell that Mr. Sinister had her under. And Madelyn realizes, we need to go rescue Nathan. So we then find out what Mr. Sinister's been doing all this time down below. He stuck Nathan in a tube of water. How is Nathan breathing? I don't know. I guess Nathan kind of reverted back to being in the womb where you're breathing the fluids. I don't know. I guess we just kind of work with it, right? Let's let it go. Anyway, whatever reason Sinister did that, it is to create a new breed of perfect creations that will be born this night. Well, would have been, except for he's going to get stopped, right? So Cyclops blasts him. What? Impossible, he says. And then Madelyn, at this point, now holds him against a wall, and they pretty much show him that you're not getting Nathan. You are not getting Nathan. It's pretty cool to see the Goblin Queen and Cyclops teaming up and saying, you stay away from our son. That is really, really cool. So basically, Sinister bolts, leaves, and warns them that you probably are going to lose your son, because they find out he has been infected. Now, Sinister was going to do more with him if he'd stayed in there, but they pulled him out halfway through whatever weird thing Sinister was doing to him. Well, Beast helps us learn about this weird thing and says it's a techno-organic virus strain, which, if you saw in the original series, Season 5, Episodes 1 and 2 were called the Phalanx Covenant, and notice it is about a techno-organic virus that tries to take over the world. Well, Sinister actually was in these episodes, and I think that's where he learned about the techno-organic virus, and that's what he was doing to Nathan. So once again, they bring you up to speed on stuff in case you didn't watch those episodes. But here's the bad news. Sinister was likely exposing Nathan to it in hopes of making him invincible, and the virus is already spreading rapidly. So Beast is basically saying there's nothing I can do. We don't have time, and I don't have the knowledge. But I'm presuming Madelyn at this point, because Madelyn we're going to see later wearing these same clothes. It does get a little bit confusing, but Madelyn says, so what you're saying is not here. We can't fix him here, not in our time, which of course triggers Bishop to jump in and say, hey, wait. I know a guy, very smart, can build anything. Of course, he's referring to Forge, who we've seen in the original series, and an old version of Forge in the future. So, yeah, he says, this band, the Time Band, has only got enough juice for Nathan and I, which is really crushing, especially to Cyclops, who he gets memories of being abandoned himself by his father. I won't be like my father, he says. I won't abandon my son. So he walks out because he cannot handle this situation. And of course, he's referring to Corsair, who in the original series we learn is his dad and also a member of the Starjammers. So, and those two have had an interesting off and on relationship. But yeah, it really affects Cyclops. So he takes off, and that leaves Madelyn to be the one to, send Nathan away. But it's really cool. She shares memories, puts memories in young Nathan's mind so he will remember both Cyclops and, this is the interesting question, Madelyn or Jean? Or does it even matter? I'll talk about that more in a second, on whose memories poor Nathan, when he wakes up, or when he grows up, whose memories is he going to have? But then here we see Bishop taking him off as Nathan is just softly crying. That's kind of sad. I mean, as a father, I can't imagine how difficult this would have been for Madelyn and for Scott. And then we see Madelyn just standing. But notice it says Jean. See, that's why I got a little confused, because the closed captioning says Jean, and they should have by this point either been saying Madelyn or Jean clone or something. But anyway, I am certain that is Madelyn, and she's saying remember, wanting him to remember. So here's what's interesting. In the original series, Season 2, Episode 8, and I've talked about this before, but now it has a little interesting twist to it. We see that Cable is indeed who that Nathan is going to grow up to be, because Cable comes back from the future, and the computer is telling him about Cyclops, field commander of the X-Men, and he says, oh no, I know about him and Jean Grey. Isn't that interesting? He says Jean Grey. So the reason I suspect that Madelyn put Jean Grey's memories in there is she has not assumed the name Madelyn yet. We're going to see that at the end. I've been calling her Madelyn because that's just simpler, but I think she put the memory of Jean Grey in Cable's mind. So that's why he remembers Jean Grey and Cyclops. So it'll be really interesting to rewatch the original series, some of these episodes with Cable, as we get this closed loop. And now we finally understand where Cable came from, right? And in fact, in that those same episodes, Jean says, I touched Cable's mind, and Cyclops says, well, who is he? What is he really up to? And she says he's more important for the future, our future, than you could ever imagine. So Jean knew, but you wonder, wow, Jean can't have known everything, because then Jean would have known that wasn't really Jean, it was really Madelyn, it was a clone. So it's just interesting to see how this is all going to pan out. Will they be rewriting the past once again? Like Bishop said, remember Bishop said, the past is always being rewritten. So will it change how these original episodes occurred, or will it make a nice closed loop? Time travel, baby, time travel. All right, so then let's talk about this situation right here. I've been saying for a while, I think I know when Jean was cloned, and it's interesting that Jean and Madelyn don't seem to care. They say, we don't know when Sinister switched us, we don't know who was really Phoenix, we don't know which one of us married Scott. But in the end, they decide it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We both have the memories. Who experienced them first is irrelevant. Okay. I don't disagree. To them, it might be irrelevant. However, to people like me, and I'm sure many of you, it does matter. We want to know, when were they switched, right? We want to know. So we talked about this a lot on the Discord server and brainstormed some. Here's, I think, the biggest hint that we get. When Madelyn is scanning Jean's memories, remember I said to keep this in mind, Madelyn sees that Jean remembers being on the moon in the Phoenix Saga, remembers sacrificing her life because that's her in the original costume. So Jean has that memory, and so does Madelyn. This goes back now to the episode 2, when it just kind of seemed random, right? Madelyn just picks up this outfit of that original costume, which of course we've seen her wearing it here, and she says, I haven't worn this old thing since that battle on the moon, in the blue area of the moon. So here's the key. Madelyn has this memory, and Jean has this memory. I'm surprised they're not putting this together, because to me, this seems like the writers, at least, are making it really clear. So then Madelyn says, I was possessed by a malevolent cosmic entity intent on consuming all of existence. And of course, again, that is the end of the Dark Phoenix Saga. So if both Jean and Madelyn have this memory, that means this had to have been Jean, and the cloning had to occur after this point. Now, when I went back and looked at all the memories that Madelyn pulled out of Jean, this was the latest memory. It doesn't mean that it's therefore telling us exactly when Jean was cloned, but it's certainly the last memory Jean had. Now let's look at the fact that in the current episodes, we learned that Professor X died, remember, November 1996, and of course that Jean was very, very, very pregnant when this episode started. So my guess is the Jean that we see in Graduation Day, the last episode of the previous series, that is not Jean, that is Madelyn, because they had to have conceived their child prior to this episode. I mean, there's just not enough of a time gap between the last series and the new series. So I think that means, therefore, Jean was cloned somewhere in between the last episode of the Dark Phoenix saga and Graduation Day. So I think that's Madelyn on the right, and that's Jean on the left. I think those two things we can say for sure. So the question is, where in between those two episodes, so the left is season 3, the right is season 5, when was Jean cloned? Well, obviously, Sinister has to have something to do with it. And Sinister yoinked Jean during the Beyond Good and Evil 4-parter. So in the first episode, episode 18, and this is season 4, we see Jean, and I do think this is Jean, pulled away from Scott on their second marriage. Remember I said they got married twice. So this is the second time they got married. Jean is pulled away from Scott, and at the end of this by Mr. Sinister, because those are the nasty boys, those are Sinister's henchmen and women, and so they grab Jean, and at the end of this 4-parter, Jean comes back and says, we don't seem to have much luck with our honeymoons, do we? I am guessing that is Madelyn, that this is the first time that we see Madelyn, because what do you do during a honeymoon? Yeah, there's a good chance you're going to conceive a child, and since we're I'm almost done with season 4 at this point, I think my guess is that is when Sinister has replaced them, because Sinister had access to Jean at that point. Now, there's one more time when Sinister does appear in season 5, the Phalanx Covenant. We already talked about that, right, with the techno-organic virus. But there was so much going on in this episode where like the virus practically takes over the world. I don't think Mr. Sinister had time to deal with cloning Jean at that point. I'm guessing instead that this is the first time that we saw Madelyn prior. So then this is really interesting. If we look at the only episodes that occurred after this point, right? So after Jean / I think Madelyn comes back, this is season 5. Jean appears in episode 2, The Phalanx Covenant, for like 30 seconds. She appears in Jubilee's Fairy Tale Theater briefly. And then, of course, she appears in Graduation Day. I think all of these appearances are Madelyn. And I think that she's probably pregnant at this point. She's pregnant somewhere. She gets pregnant somewhere during season 5, if not at the end of season 4. So I think we have our answer. And I guess I'd really like for them to answer it for us and tell us for certain. But I guess if they never do, that's going to be my headcanon. That when Mr. Sinister kidnaps her in season 4 and she comes back, that is Madelyn, and all of these appearances are Madelyn. Let me know your thoughts, but I really think they lay it out pretty clearly. Anyway, so clearly Jean and Jean don't seem to care about the situation, because Jean is saying to Jean, take care, Jean, and they shake hands. And then finally, Madelyn says, call me Madelyn Pryor. So yeah, let's reduce this confusion. We never have to worry who's Jean and who's Madelyn, because now they're going by different names. And I think that's kind of cool, because it kind of closes the loop, if you will, with the comics. In the comics, this whole saga with the Goblin Queen and their child and all that started with Madelyn saying, hey, my name's Madelyn Pryor. Ironically, as they're adapting it in the animated series, the last thing she does is assume the name Madelyn Pryor. That's kind of funny. So it's the opposite order, but we end up in the same place. So will we see Madelyn again? I don't know. I kind of think no. But if we do, that'd be cool. I wouldn't mind seeing her again. But here's why I think Scott, at least, needs to do the same stuff I did in the video. Hey, Scott, watch this video. I do think I figured out when Jean was Jean and when Jean was Madelyn. Because how awkward would this be, right? You're staring at this woman and wondering, did I conceive a child with you? Did I get married to you? Was it ever you? When was it you? I think they need to figure this out, or we're going to see a lot more of this. Boy, just awkward. So yeah, I hope they do explain it. And let me know your thoughts on when you think Jean was cloned. All right, so then we get this little teaser for the next episode. I love that they go to the Tequila Mockingbird, which of course is a play off To Kill a Mockingbird. So love that name. I would totally get a drink at Tequila Mockingbird. And inside there we see Storm sitting at the bar, and we learn that it's another hot one out in Dallas with no sign of relief. So if only there was rain, right? And then up walks a stranger who says, "What I wouldn't give if someone would just make it rain." Storm's like, "Who are you?" And he explains, "My name is Forge Storm, an old friend of Charles Xavier." Now, he is, and in fact, he's appeared in the original X-Men series, but Storm had never met him, so that's why Storm doesn't know who he is. And he says, "I'd like to help you get back what you've lost." So definitely they're setting up the life-death storyline from the comics, because that's Forge and, of course, Storm with the mohawk. I love Storm's mohawk. Looks so stinking cool. So, yeah, definitely the next episode is going to be beginning the journey of Storm getting her powers back. In fact, here we go, right? This is the list of the episodes, and notice the next one is Motendo/Life Death Part 1. And of course, that was the name of the comic. And then Motendo, my guess is that is Mojo World, and that's again why Spiral appeared, why Morph turned into Spiral, to get us thinking about Mojo World. So I love it. Cannot wait for the next episode. Really, really enjoying this series. I hope you are too. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. Don't forget, March contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, get a book or a steel book. And of course, we do have the membership option if you're interested in that. And finally, we do have the Discord server. I did a lot of brainstorming for this episode on the Discord server. We have a lot of rewatches, including we rewatch each episode of X-Men 97. We also have Comic Club and MMRPG. We have DC retrospectives where we're getting ready for the new DCU. And then we have the other media forum where we talk about Star Wars, DC, and Marvel. But honestly, you can talk about anything here that you possibly want to discuss. And then lastly, we all know my thumbnails are not that great. So we're doing a contest for when I do the next Moon Girl video, because we figured that's a really good one from an artistic standpoint. If yours wins, I will use it in the video. It'll look much better than anything I would put together, and I'll give you credit for it. So I will leave a pinned comment so you can join the Discord server. We have over 1,300 people from across the globe, conversations going on 24/7. Love to have you join us. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.